What's up, everybody? It's CMP with Craftmaster Productions and Studio1Tutorials.com. Don't forget to stop by Studio One Tutorials, pick up your premium membership. It is 50 cents a day. And don't forget to stop by CMPKits.com. Get yourself a copy of MIDI drums. Get yourself a copy of Trap Chords Volume 2. Get yourself a copy of Trap Chords for Scalar Volume 1. Do it and do it now. And also don't forget to stop by Spotify. Follow the Spicy Sundays podcast for the spiciest hot takes within the producer community, within the tech community. Yes, sir. Now, today we're going to be looking at the MPC software. I want to kind of throw you guys some help that are using the software maybe without a Akai controller, and just kind of show you what all is possible and how easy it is to really get up and running with this software and use it as a DAW. So the first thing that we want to look at is the layout. Whenever you get any software, you want to look at the layout, the signal flow, the architecture, and how things are going to work. Now, if you are used to using a linear DAW, this working inside this is gonna confuse you. It's gonna look like I've heard people say, like, I feel like I'm making beats inside DOS and stuff like that, and it's disappointing because you miss out on some of the some of the things that even the MPC software does that are probably better than some other software. So let's start it out with the left hand side of the screen, right? And this is going to be visible if you look at, all right, so if you look at the bottom left hand corner, right, this is going to be your inspector. You should be used to this from every other DAW. And what this is going to do is this is going to give you information on tracks, right? So if you want to see what's going on tracks, you could click this button to expose the MIDI channels. Over here, this will give you control over the programs, and then this will give you control over the actual pads, right? So you got to understand kind of the vocabulary of the MPC, right? So first, the first thing you have is pads, right? And pads will hold pads will hold samples depending on what type of program you were using. Okay, so programs right here, programs hold pads. Okay, now programs, you can have different types of programs. You can either run a drum program, right? You can run a key group. You can run a plugin, which this is how you would bring up your VSTs, like your Omnisphere and stuff like that. Okay. You can have a MIDI program, which will control external gear, a clip program, which is something that we'll talk about at a later date, or a control voltage program, which will affect different parameters on external gear. Most of the time, what you're going to use, especially if you're a sample-based producer, is you're going to use a drum program, obviously, to do your drums. Key group program is something that you would use to do your 808s. Like, a key group is something where you drop one sample, on C0 and spread it across the keys, right? And it'll play in different pitches, but it'll also play at different speeds unless you have warp turned on, right? But we don't need to get too far ahead of ourselves. Again, plugins that'll bring up all your VSTs, your Arturias, and your Omnispheres. And in order to mix those down, right? You would go to the program channel button right here. If you were working with drum samples and you wanted to, say, change the volume of your snare that's on A2, you just click on it, move the fader again. You see what I'm saying? So that's kind of how you get around the inspector. The inspector is super powerful. You can, you put your individual plugins here. All right. And then each one of the pads goes obviously to a program. You could think of a program kind of like a bus where all of the pads would be separate tracks, and then your program would be your bus. And then say you wanted all of your drums or all of your samples to be affected by one single plugin. You would then put that on the program strip. If you're coming from machine, this is similar to groups, right? So there you've got pads and programs, right? And it starts from the bottom. All right. As you go up, you see that you have something called tracks. Now, tracks hold programs. So anytime anytime you go to make a new track, say you had a drum program on one, then you could do a plugin. You could do a plugin on track two, and this is the way that you navigate through your tracks, right? And then track three, you could do a key group, right? Which is typically what I would have in a production. I would have, track one, I would have all my drums, right, on these pads. Track two, I would have like my key group, which is how I would use 808s, right? And then track three would be, any type of VST or instrument add-on that I would be putting onto there, right? And then so you've got tracks that hold programs that hold pads or keys, right? And then what holds tracks is sequences. And all the sequences is a sequence is a pattern. So you would go out and you would create one sequence. You would chop your sample, you would design your drums, and you would do whatever. And then when it came time to arrange your track, what you would do is you'd come here and actually no, you'd go to edit, and you would go to sequence, and you would the easiest way to arrange, right, would be to copy sequence. You hit copy sequence, 3-4 times. You make 3 or 4 sequences. You make little individual changes to those sequences, and then you arrange those to get the arrangement to your beat, right? Now, as you could see on these different groups, right? Whether it be program, track, or sequence, you don't have any options to like copy paste or anything. So getting around the menu in here is really going to be crucial. And where you edit all of that stuff is in the edit window, right? So you go to your drop down menu, you go to edit, and then these if you're discussing things with people who use MPCs, and you're using the software and they're doing things real fast, all of these options are pulled up on the controller by pressing the little pencil icon, whether it be in the sequence lane or the track lane or the program lane. These are all really clutch functions that are necessary to work fast in the machine, or in the software, which you could see just by looking at the stuff like for example, being able to transpose an entire sequence, being able to half speed what you got, or double it like you would be able to in Ableton Live, or for example, this function right here, bounce to sample, which is similar to like what I use in Studio One, where I mix down selection, right? So say you wanted to create a loop inside of the MPC software using just plugins, and then you wanted to resample that loop. What I would do is, I would load up different tracks with my Omnisphere, go ahead and play that out, click bounce to sample. Now I've got one audio file that I could trigger from a pad. In addition, this one where it says bounce to audio track, this will just put it on an audio track where you can go ahead and engage time stretch, loop it up, play your drums over it. So these are two really powerful sequence functions, right? The copy sequence, again, this will, this will double what you got. Now, if you're the same thing, same thing with tracks. A really important function for me for tracks is explode. What I like to do when I make my drums is I will, I'll make it all on one track, right? So I'll have a track that has a drum program, and then in that program it'll have the kicks and snares or whatever. So you could play it with the pads and everything. And what the problem is when I go to drag and drop it into a session, or if I go to export the stems, right? That program will bounce as one file. But if you want to separate it, if you want drum stems, or if you want stems period out of a given track, if you click explode, what explode does is it takes either every pitch that you've played on the keyboard or every pad that you've played in a drum program and assigns them to a separate track. So that way, when you go to export the stuff, you can have access to the individual stems, right? That's also super important. Clear will just delete all your stuff. You can either select all, deselect all. You've got the key commands here for that. Split events is pretty cool to experiment with. This will give you it's like it's like chopping the MIDI, right? And events, the way that Akai labels stuff, events equals like a MIDI block that you clicked in, right? So that's dope. And then in your program, right? This is where you could change the color of your pads. You could change your note mapping. This is very important. This option right here, especially if you're using, if you're trying to do like 808 key groups and stuff, the way that Akai lines up these pads is it's not like the classic MPC. It's not chromatic. Like pad 1 is C sharp, pad 2 is C, which is weird. Like, are we going up and down? Then we jump to F sharp 1, then we go to A sharp, in the fourth octave, and it doesn't make any sense. So if you plan to play like a key group or something, the best thing to do is to change your programs to chromatic, right? So these are all like, guys, these are simple quality of life things that are not straightforward, or within the actual software, but this is where you find stuff. It's just knowing the architecture between programs, tracks, and sequences, then understanding that everything that you would do in a DAW range window is available to you here in the edit window, right? So what you're probably starting to understand, I hope that you're understanding right now, is that working with an MPC and working with the MPC software it's not a linear thing. It is a modular thing. You make a loop, you make a pattern, right? And then if you want to make a song, you need to make a series of these patterns that have different variations, and then you arrange them, right? That's how it's done. So this is the main screen. Okay. These buttons right here, you could pull up a keyboard just to see what you got going on. You have your mixer window, which has been enhanced. We have sends, returns, buses now. Access to all these. You can mute, and I'm sorry, not mute, but you can hide and show tracks by clicking on them. And you get the same. So these are all just different views, right? Here's your master channel, so you can throw your mastering effects and your metering and stuff on there. submixes or buses, and then based on what submixes or returns you have created, you can then you could then route stuff like your whole key group. You can route it to sub 1 or 2. This is this should be pretty straightforward from pretty much any DAW, like, right? The output is always above the fader, so you can find all that stuff. So that's the main window. The next window that that you could get acquainted with is the MPC Track View. This is where you will see a linear layout of your of all of your tracks. So you see how I created a drum program, a plugin, and a key group. You see it'll tell you which type of track this is, and if I had MIDI information or audio, it would show here. It also gives you an audio track. Audio tracks is where, like, if you guys use Splice and stuff like that, and you want to drag in loops, this is what you want to do. You want to drag your loops to an audio track, and not treat it like a sample. This is easier to work with the warp and everything like that. This is your program edit screen, and all this is depending on what track you have. Let's go back to a drum track, right? So this will give you all of the options that are in the program window, the program edit window. So you can you could take one pad and stack up to 4 samples on it, and then decide which velocity those samples will be triggered on. So you could do like a multi-sample type of thing. If you're trying to like recreate realistic instruments, you have options of different filters, different playthrough modes. This is where you can make the difference between a one-shot sample, which is going to ring out when you play it, or a note on, which will, as soon as you let go of your keyboard, it will stop. You can get into different choke groups, and things like that. It's a very powerful tool. It is, to be honest with you, it is really not necessary for what we do, for how I use this, with the exception of creating a key group for 808s. Like that's pretty much all I use this for. I don't go crazy stacking drums or anything like that. I just pick good samples. The sample edit window, this is where you would edit a sample. This is where you would tune a sample, time stretch it, do all these different functions that are available to you here. The pad mixer, this is just going to show you all your different pads, and if you have sounds on it, and depending on which lane you have selected, you'll be able to mix it here. Here's your track mixer, which is just going to pull the mixer up on the bottom, and you can mix your tracks. Here's your record, which you can record different samples coming in. This is your looper. I don't think you guys will use that this much. And then this is your track mute screen. So this is for like the old school MPC workflow, where we used to like play 3 minutes of the song, and the way that we would do our arrangements is by recording track mutes. This kind of gives you the window to doing that, but I don't think if you're working within a DAW and you're just dragging and dropping stems into a linear DAW, I don't think you need to worry about this so much. But if you guys want to see more on it, just let me know. So, and then you have these options on the bottom. They'll give you it's these buttons pretty much correlate with the right side of the screen, right? So you could put different metadata inside of your project, and then you could put different notes like needs more cowbell, right? because people love track notes for some reason. I don't know why. I don't know why. I don't get it. Here you could suggest a feature or report a bug directly to Akai. You got this guy right here, which is going to show you different global pad parameters. This is just kind of like the architecture of your project, the folder layout. This shows you every move that you have made on your Akai, almost like in a tracker style fashion. I'm sorry. This guy right here is your expansion browser. So if you're looking for your expansions, I don't have any expansions installed, so that's why you won't see it. Yeah, those guys right there. And then this is probably the most important. This one that looks like a disk. This one is your file browser, and this is how you get to your stuff, right? This is how you get to your volumes. And then these folders right here are, you know, shortcuts that you can create to get to where you want to go on your system, right? So this is how you browse your drives. This is like the most important thing. That is the basics of the MPC like plugin software. Oh, let me show you another thing that you're gonna want to know. You're gonna want to get familiar with where is it? You're gonna want to get familiar with the preferences window. There's some key things in here that can that can really help you out. The main thing that I want you guys to see is the general tab, especially if you're working on a good computer. The first thing that you're going to want to change is this time stretch mode. Change it to Elastic Pro. Elastic Pro is Z-Plane industry standard time stretch. It's the time stretch that lets you change a sample from 140 beats per minute to 100 beats per minute and it not sound like it's being fucking ran through a wood chipper. All right, so that's important. This will also allow you to make sure that you're using all the cores on your computer. This also lets you switch into your vintage mode. MPC 60 is my favorite. 3000 is pretty cool, but MPC 60 is pretty raw. They'll let you change different tap tempo options. It'll let you, this is where you tell it, for you Windows guys that have your plugins installed everywhere. This is where you point to your plugins folder. This is where your MIDI instruments will show up. And this is where you can make different, different adjustments to your pads and things like that. So the preferences window pane. But yeah, hopefully you guys will have a better understanding of the layout of this software, and kind of once you get your head around it, it's really easy to make beats very quickly inside of this. And it's super easy to use it just for drums inside of your DAWS sessions as a plugin. So it's a CMP with Craftmaster Productions, Studio1tutorials.com. You guys keep it simple, but do not be basic. And we will see you on the next one, fam.